Not too long ago, Karen and I stumbled upon a show on the physics channel. Did anybody even know there was a physics channel? We didn't know it either. We just found it and went, wow, this is cool. And it was a fascinating documentary on the feud between Niels Bohr and Albert Einstein, two titans of the scientific community from the last century. And it focused, for the most part, on the Solvay Conference in 1927, where 29 scientists had gathered to work on the new quantum theory. They were really smart people. 17 of them went on to win Nobel Prizes, including the only woman, Marie Curie, who won 2. But it was Bohr and Einstein who stole the show, because Einstein insisted that reality is fixed. It is what it is. And even if we don't understand something, it's just because we haven't gotten there yet. But Bohr, he saw things a little bit differently. He said that reality is interactive. Because light can behave as both a solid particle and a wave of energy, the particles might not even exist until they are being observed. Einstein said the world is solid, and Bohr said, sometimes. What does this have to do with our world? Because really, quantum mechanics are not that easily transferred into our lived reality. But I do think they hint that we might have more control over what we experience than we've been led to believe. It has to do with what we let ourselves see. When I was very little, probably 7 or 8, I experienced a miracle on Christmas Eve. We had gone up to my Nana's apartment. She lived on the 3rd floor of a subsidized housing building to pick her up for Christmas Eve Mass, because we were Catholic. There was a lot of us. And it was snowing so hard you could barely see. We all trounced up to look at her Christmas tree and eat those little sticky hard candies that old people always had in their candy dishes. But it was crowded. It was a small room, so I went over and stood by the window to look out into the snow and watch what was going out there. And that's when I saw it. There was a white, glowing cross floating up in the middle of the snowstorm. Now, I didn't want to break the spell, so I didn't tell anybody else in my family. I just watched it glowing in the sky, seeing it as a message that God would give us guidance no matter how rough the weather. I can still feel the wonder in my small heart. But on a subsequent visit, I went to the window and noticed for the very first time that there was a church about a block away that had a neon cross at the top of its steeple. It had been there the whole time my Nana lived there, but I had never noticed it before. Have you ever done that? Have you ever noticed something that was there for like a door in a building? You're like, the paint looks old, but it's new, right? No. How much of our lives do we not see, not take into account because it's not part of the reality that we've been told to expect? How do we see beyond the blinders that have been imposed by ourselves and by society around us? I know we're holding a lot of anxiety right now, especially what happened yesterday with Donald Trump being shot at. Our politics are insane. There's AI, there's deep, deep divisions, there's the climate changing noticeably around us. And oh yeah, there's rising authoritarianism around the card. But yay for France, yay for England. Maybe we can join that trifecta, right? But I think in authoritarianism, people are looking for someone to save them from all of this scary stuff that's all around us. Save them from what? From ourselves? I think the problem is the story that we're all living within. Because the story we are living in now says that it's a top-down reality, that says that all the leaders, they're the powerful people, and they make things happen. And it's a story told by empire that makes all the rest of us insignificant. We don't matter. And we can be pacified and distracted by the promise of maybe getting some nice things or the illusion that some of us matter more than others. But what if that entire story is just wrong? There are thought leaders out there like Bayo Akomolafe, like Arundhati Roy, Margaret Wheatley, Francis Weller, all kinds of folks out there who see the world differently. Akomolafe is known for saying the times are urgent. Let us slow down. Let us slow down. And how countercultural, how backwards does that seem? But he's saying that in our rush to fix things, maybe we are simply enacting roles in a play that's been going on for a very long time. And maybe what we need to do is slow down out of the rush that we are constantly being put in and step outside of that story. Maybe we need to re-look at this shared reality that takes away our agency, that helps us to understand ourselves as embedded in an interactive and responsive reality. Akomalafe begins by looking at the old ways. He says the elders, they poured wine on the ground before they took a sip to say, thank you. I know that this wine has come from the ground, and I'm going to give a little bit back before I take a sip. How do we do that? How do we look beyond what modernity tells us is true and ask what our hearts know is really true? What other truths might be out there? What if we step beyond our current story and beginning looking at the entire world with wonder and curiosity? Maybe that cross is floating in the snow. It could be. What if we saw the world from a different non-empire perspective? There's a poem that speaks to my heart, written by David White, entitled Everything is Waiting for You. And he writes, your great mistake is to act the drama as if you were alone. Surely even you at times must note the way the soap dish enables you, or the window latch grants you freedom. Put down the weight of your aloneness and ease into the conversation. The kettle is singing even as it pours you a drink. The cooking pots have left their arrogant aloofness and seen the good in you at last. All the birds and creatures of this world are unutterably themselves. Everything is waiting for you. End quote. What would it be like to live in a world where everything was waiting for you? Where each and every one of us is intimately connected, where each and every one of us belongs. Isn't that a different story than the one we live within? Arundhati Roy says that we must change our relationship with the reality and change our conception of what power even is. We will never win by trying to overcome empire, because winning is what empire created. We have to let go of winning. She writes, our strategy should not be only to confront empire, but to lay siege to it, to deprive it of oxygen, to shame it, to mock it, with our art and our music and our literature, with our stubbornness, with our joy, with our brilliance, our sheer relentlessness, our ability to tell our own stories. She continues, another world is not only possible, she is on her way. On a quiet day, I can hear her breathing. Another world personified as she, as alive and entangled, as present and engaged as any of us are. But how do we do this? Maybe starting slow, starting small. Maybe we don't have to change the whole world. Maybe we just have to create little islands of sanity. How many of you remember the fall of the Berlin Wall? It was back in 1989. Yeah. For many of us, it came completely out of the blue. A prolonged division between peoples was suddenly gone. But was it really sudden? This was actually an example of the principle of emergence, which is an ecological term. Because in nature, when systems are threatened by adverse conditions, small pockets of health form, and they become refuge for plants and animals to survive until those circumstances pass. And when there's enough pockets, one small change in the environment can cause the entire ecosystem to flip overnight. Think of a desert where seeds have lied dormant for a very long time, but a rain shower comes through and suddenly the desert is filled with flowers. The seeds were there all along, right? It just needed one difference, and then suddenly everything was different. In human systems, we call those pods or seeds islands of sanity, places where folks choose to trust the innate wisdom and communal health, no matter what the world around them is telling them or selling them. In Germany, people gathered in small groups envisioning a unified country, supporting life-affirming values and holding on to a reality very different from the one that they saw around them. And the abrupt destruction of the wall revealed the faith of thousands of people who held that vision, even though they'd never got to experience it or live within that. That's the amazing part, isn't it? It didn't start from the top down. It came up from the bottom. It changed from a groundswell of individuals simply refusing to go along with the status quo any longer. For eons, spiritual teachers have been telling us that the world we want is already here. Jesus said, "The kingdom of God is within you." Right here. We simply have to open our eyes, open our ears, and hear and see and breathe and live it. I've long been encouraged by the words of Margaret Mead. You know them. Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. But always in the past, I heard that to mean that a small group would keep growing and growing and growing until they overturned everything and they won. They became the empire that made the world different. But today I see it totally differently. I see that we don't have to win. We don't have to change the world. We just have to recognize and make space for a different reality right here in our midst. We can envision a loving, life-affirming, empire-suffocating reality where each and every person is beautiful, each and every person is a beloved expression of life. I know you already have a bit of that right here. I know this community has that, holding on to that vision for the world. But how else can we grow it in other parts of our lives, huh? I mean, for a start, we can open our eyes and just see those things that make us smile. Some of the things that have changed the way I see the world is learning that trees cooperate. They share resources. They support the weakest among them. Trees are awesome. And learning that dogs dream about us in their sleep. That just made the world nicer, didn't it? And finding out that there's this whole group of birds called firehawks that pick up a burning branch and drop it to a dry area to start a fire to flush out their lunch, so that humans have always thought we are so great because we use the tool of fire. These birds have been doing that for a million years. The world is incredible. If we stop seeing what we've been told to see and start seeing what's actually out there. This is a confession. My daughter and I send Instagrams back and forth to each other. And of course, I've trained my algorithms to only give me animals and good things like that. And it makes me cry almost every time I open it up, because there's some amazing story of these animals, this dog and this elephant friend, or, just all of these things that I never knew existed in the world. But because I just opened this little video, I see what else is out there. Maybe life has all of the answers that we need if we simply stop commodifying it and seeing it as dead and begin seeing it as alive all around us. Begin seeing it as a thing that we live and we breathe and we are entangled within. Because maybe everything we think we know is simply an arrangement of facts which no longer serve us. Can we break open that paradigm of empire? Can we reject hierarchies of all kinds? Can we rethink who we respect and why? And begin acting as if everything we do in this world is sacred. Everything we do matters. For a long time, I didn't recognize my own connection. I gave lip service to it, but I didn't live it. But we came through a really hard time in our lives, and coming out of grief, my perception of life and my experience of life has changed. And I began a practice that made me call into awareness of the world around me by simply paying attention. I learned the crows outside our door. I started noticing the phases of the moon I looked for the way the world shares and offers itself to me every single day. We are so blessed. We have 2 families of turkeys and 21 baby turkeys that go through the yard. And it's just like, that's my best part of my day if I happen to go out and see the turkeys wandering by. It's paying attention. It's seeing magic and wonder and beauty and possibility where we didn't know there was there before. Every time I get into our one car, I thank the car for its nearly 200,000 miles it has carried us. And then I blow down the road because I ask anything that might get in the way. I ask the road to keep both any beings and ourselves in the car safe as we travel down it. I mean, I don't know if it works, but I do know that last January, we were in deep conversation when we got in the car. We hit a deer. Broke my heart because I'd forgotten to blow. I'd forgotten to pray before we got in the car that day. And so, was it a coincidence? Maybe. Will I forget again? I doubt it. We may not be able to save the world. We may not be able to stop the climate from changing. We may not feel powerful, and the world tells us, the way the world tells us, you have to be powerful. But we can live within this world as if we are deeply connected to the life force and the reality that our indigenous siblings have known since the dawn of time, that our very own ancestors lived every single day. A vibrant, alive, interactive reality in which every being is sibling, every person is sacred, every being out there is sharing this short bit of time that we have on this beautiful, tiny planet. Albert Einstein thought we lived in a fixed reality where every mystery was simply an undiscovered fact. But Bohr saw it differently. He said the world is predictable sometimes. And sometimes we believe what we see, and sometimes what we see creates what we can believe in. Today, as you go out into this raining, just wonderfully rich, lush day, pay attention. Notice the warm breeze caressing your cheek, the sounds of birds and pollinators and chittering squirrels, all waiting for you to see them, to be in the world with them. Because miracles are around us all the time if we open our eyes, if we open our ears, if we live not out there, not in fear, not in what might happen, but in right here, right now. The kingdom is in our midst if we open our eyes to see it. She is on her way. She is us. Amen and blessed be.
Visit us at UUSG.org.